The spaghetti was black, not slightly overcooked, burnt to a crisp. Smoke spiraled out from the pot like it was sending up a signal. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, waiting for her to say something. Anything. Dana looked up from her phone, blinked once, said, "Don't worry, I'll just order something." That was it. No sigh. No eye roll. No playful jab. Just a numb voice and fingers already swiping through delivery apps. If I hadn't been standing right there, you'd think the stove caught fire on its own. And that's when I realized something awful. I could probably disappear mid-sentence, and she wouldn't notice until the credit card stopped working. But 24 hours later, she proved me wrong. It was Tessa's voice that did it. Loud, chirpy, like she lived in her own personal reality show. We were standing in the kitchen, the three of us, me making awkward small talk, Dana barely pretending to listen, and Tessa talking a mile a minute. I was about to excuse myself when Tessa laughed out of nowhere and said, "Girl, how do you even focus when your husband looks like that?" Seriously, Curtis could be in one of those moody furniture ads. The silence hit hard. Dana's smile froze mid-lip. I saw her grip her wine glass tighter, eyes darting to me like she just noticed a stranger standing in the room. She let out this dry little laugh and said, "He's fine. Just don't feed his ego, or he'll start wearing leather jackets or something." Tessa laughed. I didn't, because I knew that tone, that false lightness that covered something sharp underneath. What Dana didn't know was that I'd been testing her. The burnt dinner wasn't an accident. Neither was letting Tessa into our home without warning her ahead of time. I'd been slipping things into our routine, subtle things, seeing if she'd flinch, seeing if she'd react. And nothing moved her, until someone else looked at me like I mattered. That was the moment she started paying attention again. She made me coffee the next morning, asked if I wanted to go for a walk, touched my shoulder when I passed her in the hallway. Too late. Because 3 nights earlier, I found the messages, and I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know who she really was when the lights weren't on her. So I smiled back at her that morning. I said, "Thank you for the coffee." And I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just truth. I just stood there in the hallway, holding her phone, reading that message over and over again while the shower ran behind the bathroom door. "I missed you last night." Her body's in your bed, but her mind's still mine. At first, I thought it was spam. One of those weird junk messages that sneak past filters. But then I saw the name. R, no last name. Just an initial. And I knew. Not because I recognized the sender, but because of what wasn't there. Dana had no emojis in their thread. No hearts. No pet names. Just blunt, clinical messages and hidden longing between the lines. Like two people trying to bury a fire under a snowstorm. I didn't unlock her phone on purpose. Honestly, she left it on the kitchen counter while she stepped into the shower. It lit up when a notification came through, and I only touched it to silence it. That's when it unlocked. She must have turned off the passcode weeks ago, and I hadn't even noticed. Just like everything else I hadn't noticed. That's what really messed with my head. I thought I was the one being ignored. I thought she didn't look at me because she was tired or stressed or simply over our marriage in a slow, harmless way. But that message? That was alive. That was active. And somewhere behind all her blank stares and phone scrolling and cold coffee cups, Dana had been living a second reality. The irony? I didn't even want to catch her. I wasn't looking for evidence. I wasn't ready for it. When she came out of the shower, I was standing at the sink, rinsing a mug, pretending. She kissed my cheek like she hadn't just been intimate with someone else's mind the night before. Like she hadn't slipped into bed beside me with someone else's name echoing in her head. And I kissed her back. Not because I forgave her, but because I needed to see what else she would do, thinking I didn't know. That day, I played the part. I complimented her dress. I suggested we go out for dinner. I even held her hand while walking past our neighbors. And the whole time, she acted surprised. Like she didn't expect me to be warm anymore. Like I was the one changing suddenly. And maybe I was. But not in the way she thought. I wasn't becoming loving. I was becoming quiet. And quiet is dangerous. Because quiet pays attention. Because quiet plans. What she didn't know was that I'd copied the entire message thread to my laptop. And I had already started matching our messages to her late-night grocery runs, gym sessions, and emergency client calls. But what I found next, that part shook me more than the affair itself. Because R wasn't just a fling. He was a name I already knew. A name from before we were married. And it made me realize, maybe I was never the main character in her story at all. I sat alone in the garage that night, laptop open, fingers frozen above the keyboard as I stared at the contact name. R. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. My mind had gone totally still, like my brain was holding its breath. Because once I scrolled back far enough, once I stopped being scared to look closer, the truth screamed loud and clear. R was Ryland Bishop. Yeah, that Ryland. Her ex from college. The one who cheated on her with her roommate and made her drop out a semester early. The one whose name she used to spit out like poison. The one she said she'd block forever if he ever contacted her again. He ruined who I was, she once told me, years ago, with glassy eyes. If I ever let him back into my life, you have permission to walk away. I remember that line clearly, because I thought it was beautiful at the time. Dramatic, but sincere. So you can imagine how it felt to see messages from him, dated just 3 weeks ago, saying, you don't have to keep lying to him. You don't flinch around me like you do around him. That means something. The sickest part? She responded. Not to argue. Not to block him. She said, I know. I just need more time. More time for what? To get used to replacing me? To erase the life we built? To soften the blow before she finally tells me she's gone? I should have been furious. I wanted to be. But instead, all I felt was this deep, nauseating emptiness. I went back through the last 6 months in my head, clicking through old calendar entries and syncing them up with her vague excuses. And one by one, all the dots connected. That night she said she was at a networking mixer in Fort Collins. I checked her photo location, Denver, Ryland City. The out-of-town wedding I wasn't invited to? Ryland's cousin. That surprise weekend self-care retreat? She sent a picture of a spa. The GPS data said motel. The worst part is how stupid I felt. I used to pride myself on being the good guy who trusted his wife completely. The guy who didn't need to snoop, who believed in space and respect. But now I realized I hadn't been trusting her. I'd been sleeping through my own betrayal. That night, she came into the garage to bring me tea. She smiled and said, You've been out here forever. Working on something. I smiled back and said, Yeah, trying to figure some things out. She kissed my forehead. She had no idea what I knew. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to confront her right away. No shouting, no breakdown, no begging her to stay or explain. I wanted her to show me who she really was when she thought I was still in the dark. If she could keep playing house, then so could I, at least for a while longer. Because the more I waited, the more she revealed. And the more she revealed, the more I realized this wasn't just an affair. This was a performance. One she'd been rehearsing for months. The table was already set when I walked in. Real plates, folded napkins, 2 wine glasses, even the good candles she normally saves for guests. Dana stood at the stove in an apron, humming to herself like she hadn't made microwave soup the last 3 nights in a row. The smell hit me hard. Rosemary chicken with lemon and garlic, my absolute favorite. It was so strange, so out of place, that my first instinct wasn't gratitude. It was suspicion. What's the occasion? I asked, keeping my voice light. She turned, smiled, and shrugged like it was nothing. You've been working hard lately. I thought it was time I made a little effort. A little effort. After weeks of dead silence and cold shoulders. Now she was putting on perfume and making my childhood comfort food? It didn't add up. Not unless she was trying to distract me from something. Or compensate for something. And I already knew what. We sat down and ate. She kept the conversation going with forced cheerfulness, asking about my work, my coworkers, even my sleep. I played along, letting her lead. It was almost theatrical, the way she leaned in with concern when I told her I'd been tired. Like she was studying how to mimic being a wife again. At one point, she even reached across the table to touch my hand and said, I feel like we've been off lately. I just want you to know I'm here. I'm trying. Trying what? To rewrite the last few months as a rough patch? To convince herself I hadn't seen the texts? To bury Ryland under mashed potatoes and mood lighting? I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and said, I appreciate that. Because what else could I say? If I exploded now, it would just give her control over the narrative. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie, something we hadn't done in weeks. She even curled up beside me on the couch like she used to, her head against my shoulder, fingers laced in mine. And it made me sick. Because now I knew how easy it was for her to fake closeness. She could perform affection while keeping another man's messages saved in her phone. She could smile while she was building a second life behind my back. Halfway through the movie, she fell asleep. I didn't move. I just sat there in the flickering light, watching her breathe. Her face looked peaceful, innocent, almost. And that was the cruelest part of all. Because I realized then that she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. In her mind, I was probably just a placeholder now. Someone to keep the mortgage steady while she fed her soul elsewhere. She didn't know that the very next day, I had an appointment with a lawyer. She didn't know that I'd been logging every business trip she took, every excuse she gave, every message from Rylan I could trace back to a time she told me she was exhausted or needed space. She didn't know that while she was asleep on the couch, I was quietly transferring our shared documents from the cloud onto a private drive. Because she thought I was clueless. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd never leave. But when she told her friend that I wouldn't last 2 weeks without her, I had already moved half of my clothes into storage. It was a Thursday morning when I finally said it. Nothing dramatic. No storm. No slammed doors. The sky outside was soft gray, the kind of light that makes everything feel fragile. Dana was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. I had been up since 5, pacing, rehearsing the words over and over in my head. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, steadier than it had been in months. I stood by the fridge, pretending to look for something. Then I turned to her, took a quiet breath, and said, "You're not nearly as good at hiding it as you think you are." She blinked, didn't move. Her thumb hovered mid-scroll. Her eyes didn't even meet mine right away. "What?" she asked. I walked to the table, sat down across from her, and kept my gaze fixed on her face. "I know about Rylan. I know he's not just some guy from the past. I know you've been seeing him, talking to him. I've read everything." The color drained from her cheeks in a way I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not even guilt. Just shock. Like a trapdoor had opened beneath her, and she wasn't sure if she was falling yet. "You went through my phone," she whispered. That was her defense? That was the thing she latched onto? "You left it unlocked. That's not the part you should be worried about." I leaned back, watching her. She was gripping her coffee mug now like it could anchor her. "You lied to me. For months. Every touch, every dinner, every fake smile, it was all a cover. And the worst part is, I think you believed I'd never find out." She finally met my eyes, and for a second, I thought I saw something real, not sorrow, but fear. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. She put the mug down and sat up straighter. "It wasn't like that," she said. "You don't understand. Try me." She opened her mouth, closed it, looked toward the window like it held the script she needed to follow. "Rylan reached out first," she finally said. "It was never supposed to turn into anything. We just talked. I was in a weird place. You were so distant. There it was. The twist of the knife. My fault, somehow. Distant?" I repeated. "You mean the nights I sat next to you in silence because every time I tried to talk, you stared through me like I wasn't even there? The mornings I made coffee just so we could maybe share 5 human seconds together?" She flinched. Good. Because I had been flinching inside for over a year. "Curtis, I didn't sleep with him," she said quickly. "I swear, it wasn't physical." I laughed. I actually laughed, and it sounded hollow in the quiet kitchen. "You think that's the line? You think emotional betrayal is somehow better?" I shook my head. "You gave him everything you withheld from me. Every part of you that used to belong to this marriage, you handed to him in silence." She started to cry. Finally. But I didn't move. I didn't reach for her hand or try to wipe away the tears like I used to. I just sat there and let her sit in it. "Are you going to leave?" she asked, voice small, barely above a whisper. "I already did," I said. "Weeks ago. You just didn't notice. My body was here. My heart packed its bags the moment I saw his name on your screen." I stood up, grabbed the envelope from the counter, and dropped it in front of her. Inside was a copy of the lease for a small apartment on the other side of town. My name on it. First month already paid. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to yell. I just wanted you to know that I know. And that I'm done." She didn't try to stop me. She just stared at the envelope like it was ticking. I didn't take anything but my keys and my backpack when I walked out that door. No suitcase. No speech. But what I didn't know yet was that Dana wasn't ready to let go. I was only 3 nights into my new apartment when it started. The first couple of days were silent, blessedly so. No phone calls. No texts. No guilt-laced voice messages begging for understanding. I thought maybe Dana had finally accepted it, that it was over, and I was serious. I spent those days unpacking slowly, keeping the blinds half closed, taking long walks without looking over my shoulder. I even started sleeping with my phone off, something I hadn't done in years. I needed the silence. I thought I'd earned it. But peace doesn't last when someone feels like you're slipping from their grip. On the fourth evening, there was a knock at the door. I didn't expect anyone, hadn't told a soul where I'd moved, not even my brother. I crept over quietly, peered through the peephole, and there she was. Dana, standing there like she belonged, holding 2 takeout bags like it was some casual Thursday night dinner date. I didn't open the door right away. Honestly, I considered not opening it at all. But she saw the peephole darken. She knew I was there. So I cracked it open, one chain still bolted. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not even trying to sound polite. She smiled, a soft, practiced smile, like we were back to the beginning and none of the damage existed. "I figured you hadn't cooked yet," she said, lifting the bags. "Chinese. Your favorite." I blinked. "Dana, this isn't your home. You can't just show up like this." Her smile faltered, but only for a second. "I'm not trying to barge in. I just thought maybe we could talk." "You walked out so fast, I didn't get a chance to explain." "You did explain," I said flatly. "You explained with every lie, every text to Rylan, every look you gave him that you stopped giving me." That hit her. Her shoulders dipped slightly, and for a moment, she looked human again. "I was wrong," she said. "I didn't think you'd ever leave. That was my mistake. I took you for granted. But I've been thinking, maybe this is our reset. Maybe this is what we needed to realize how much we still mean to each other." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stepped back and stared at her through the narrow crack of the door, stunned by the delusion. "You think this is a movie? We're not rediscovering each other through tragedy. You destroyed something. It doesn't grow back just because you're suddenly scared." Her expression changed in an instant. No more sweet voice. No soft smile. Her eyes narrowed, jaw clenched, and just like that, the mask slipped. "You're really going to throw away 10 years over a few texts?" she snapped. "He doesn't even matter." It was stupid. I was lonely. "You had a partner," I snapped back. "You had me. And you buried me alive in silence while you fed your ego with someone who already broke you once before. Don't stand there and talk about loneliness like it justifies betrayal." She tried to push the door open further, but the chain caught. I closed it slowly, locked it completely, and walked away without another word. She stayed out there for nearly 15 minutes. I heard her pacing, muttering to herself, knocking again. Then silence. I waited a full hour before I peeked out. She was gone. But the bags were still there, neatly placed at the threshold like peace offerings to a god that stopped listening. The next morning, I found something worse. She hadn't gone home. She'd gone to Rylan. And what she did with him, and how I found out, shattered the last sliver of empathy I had left for her. I didn't sleep after she left the food at my door. I sat in the corner of my small living room, knees pulled up, back against the wall, just staring at nothing. The takeout bags were still by the entrance, untouched. I didn't want her food. I didn't want anything from her. But I couldn't bring myself to throw them away either, like they were radioactive, and touching them might let her back in somehow. Sometime around 3 a.m., I dozed off on the floor, shoes still on. When I woke up, the sky outside was already bright, and I felt like I'd been run over by something invisible. My phone buzzed from across the room. I picked it up, expecting more text from Dana, maybe another attempt to spin this into some twisted love story. But it wasn't from her. It was from a guy I knew through work, Paul. We weren't close, just the kind of acquaintance who knew too much about your personal life from company events. He sent a photo with a short message. "Didn't you say your wife hates downtown diners?" I clicked the image. There they were, Dana and Rylan, sitting in a booth together at Harvey's Diner, the one I used to take her to before we were even married. The one she always said felt cheap and greasy. The photo wasn't blurry. It wasn't taken in secret. Paul must have walked right past them. Rylan had his arm resting behind her, fingers lightly grazing her shoulder. Dana was smiling in that lazy, familiar way I hadn't seen in years. Like she was home. I stared at that image longer than I want to admit. Not because I couldn't believe it. No, by that point, belief wasn't the problem. It was the clarity. The way it confirmed everything, not just the affair, but the emotional rewrite she had done in her head. She wasn't mourning the marriage. She was replacing it. While I sat in an empty apartment trying to process betrayal, she was laughing over coffee in a booth we once called ours. I didn't reply to Paul. I didn't message Dana. Instead, I got in my car and drove not to the diner, but to her mother's house. Why? Because I needed to know if Dana had told anyone yet. If the story being spun to the world was that I had abandoned her, or walked out for no reason. Her mom and I were never especially close, but she always liked me. Thought I was steady, whatever that means. When I knocked, her mother answered with wide eyes, clearly not expecting me. "Oh, Curtis." I thought. That I left, I finished for her. She nodded awkwardly. "Dana said you were going through something. That you needed space." That was it. That was the narrative now. Not betrayal. Not infidelity. Just a vague implication that I'd gone off the deep end and left poor Dana all alone. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a bitter exhale. I thanked her and left without explaining a thing. I wasn't going to defend myself to people who only got half the story, especially if the other half was being edited in real time. But I made a new decision that afternoon. No more quiet departure. No more vanishing like a ghost so she could repaint the past however she pleased. She wanted the world to see her as the victim? Then maybe it was time the world saw what really happened. I started drafting a letter. Not to Dana. Not to her mom. Not even to Rylan. It was addressed to someone else entirely. Someone who'd unknowingly played a huge role in all of this, and had no idea their name was about to become the match that lit the whole thing on fire. The letter was never meant to go viral. It wasn't slick or dramatic or written for attention. I wrote it from the same tiny desk I'd assembled myself in my new apartment, in a chair that still creaked because I hadn't tightened the bolts. I wrote it not out of anger, but out of exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that comes from being lied to, manipulated, and finally, discarded like an old sweater someone used to love. It was addressed to Rylan's fiancé. Yes, you read that right. Turns out the man who had stolen my wife's attention and heart wasn't nearly as single as Dana had made him out to be. I found her name while going through tagged photos on his social media, buried deep under posts with filtered brunch shots and gym selfies. Her name was Sierra, and she'd been with Rylan for 5 years. I didn't rant. I didn't curse. I just laid everything out, the screenshots, the dates, the details Dana had shared about her business trips, and the proof that those trips were anything but professional. I even attached the photo from the diner, the one where Dana was smiling like she'd never tasted regret in her life. I had sinned. And then I waited. I didn't hear back for 2 days. And then my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hi," the message read. "I think we should talk." I had no idea. We met for coffee. Sierra was calm, measured, and heartbreakingly kind. She didn't scream or cry, she just thanked me. Said she needed to know. Said that if it hadn't been for me, she would have walked into a marriage built on fiction. And then she handed me something, a USB drive. I found this in Rylan's sock drawer. You might want to look at it. When I got home and opened it, I didn't expect what I found. There were videos, voicemails, screenshots of Dana talking to Rylan about me, mocking my routines, my kindness, even the way I made dinner. "He's so safe. It's boring," she wrote. "Sometimes I wish he'd get mad. At least I'd know he still feels something." That night, I cried for the last time. Not for her. Not even for the lost years. I cried because I finally let it go. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped wondering if I hadn't been enough. Because I had been enough. I had shown up. I had tried. And what she wanted, what she chased, wasn't love. It was chaos. She fed on instability, on the thrill of secret texts and backroom plans, and she mistook that for passion. After that, I deleted everything. I moved on. It didn't happen quickly. Healing never does. But it did happen. I started hiking again. I rebuilt friendships that Dana had quietly pushed away. I joined a small photography group downtown. I even got a dog, a goofy, floppy-eared rescue named Milo who now follows me like a shadow. And one day, at the park, camera around my neck, Milo trying to chew his own leash, I met someone. Her name was Paige. She wasn't flashy or perfect or trying to play a part. She just smiled like she meant it, laughed like the world wasn't on fire, and asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. I said yes. That was 6 months ago. Now, I still sit at that same creaky desk. But the light feels different. The silence isn't heavy. It's peaceful. The kind that comes not when someone stops speaking to you, but when you finally start hearing yourself again. So no, this story didn't end in revenge. It ended in clarity. And somehow, against all odds, it ended in something I thought I'd lost for good. Hope.